Dear students, good morning. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, 22nd June 2018. The first article, How the World Explains Football. Here, I'm going to see it from a larger context of the sport. How the sport affects the world. It affects you and me, it affects nations, it affects communities, it also builds cooperation between the people, or it may build divides. Let us try to see what the sport does to different dimensions of human living, different aspects of human living. Let me give you certain examples. In Munich, in Germany, Israeli players were killed, and that has become or that brought in huge sympathy to the Israeli cause. And second, in 1968 Mexico Olympics, if you observe, three medalists they have raised the issue of racial discrimination in the United States of America, and it gave fillip to the Martin Luther King's movement. And finally, right to vote has got into African Americans got the right to vote. And further, if we go, in South Africa, sport is innovatively used by Nelson Mandela to build the bridges between various communities. A rainbow revolution that has occurred in South Africa is majorly due to the integrative force that is football, the game, integrative force of this game that is football. So when you come into India, so cricket is the sport that unites an entire country. And also, whenever we want to diplomatically express our views to Pakistan, the sport is wrongly or rightly used. So in that way, the sports impact the body politic, unity among the communities, and also divides among the people. So in this context, that is football World Cup, which is going on in Russia, it has many takeaways. In the Iran, for the first time, women are allowed into Azadi Stadium to watch the football live. And second, FIFA has many charges of corruption against it. Again, that also come into question. Similarly, drug misuse. Or if you see in the Olympics, many Russian players were banned because of the drug abuse. When Russia was said to be hosting this game, people felt that is it appropriate? And after that, it is going for Qatar. So in that way, human rights violations are countries which are violating the human rights. These are not being taken into consideration while deciding the hosting country. That's what is the criticism. Finally, what I can say is this. A sport can be seen from different perspectives. A sport can be a unifying thing, as we saw it in South Africa. Or sports can be a movement for justice, as we saw it in Iran, or as we saw it in the Mexico Olympics. Sports can be divisive, as we saw in killing of Israeli players in Munich Olympics. That's how, from many dimensions, we can see that. This is the essence of this article. Jammu and Kashmir, an old Kashmir Jammu dilemma. Now, if you take this state, we have three regions in Indian part as of now: Ladakh, Kashmir, Jammu. So, Jammu is Hindu dominated, Kashmir is Muslim dominated region. When Sheikh Abdullah became the prime minister, it was called as then, of Jammu and Kashmir, he brought in land reforms. Now, when Raja Hari Singh was at the helm of affairs, all the employees of the state are Hindus. And second, most of the land in Jammu was possessed by Hindus. Because of these land reforms, Hindus were in a state of dispossession of their land. And it raised the antagonism against Mr. Sheikh. And the people of Jammu formed Jammu Praja Parishad. And right wing in India, especially Jan Sangh, that is headed by S.P. Mukherjee, it has given unequivocal support to it. So because of this, the narrative which was built, or the ground that was built to solve the Kashmir problem, entire thing got faded away. Let me put it this way. Sheikh Abdullah enjoyed the respect of the people and popular support. He is a good friend of Nehru. And Muhammad Ali, who became the Prime Minister of Pakistan, is also actively looking into a solution for Kashmir. But nothing of this moved forward because of this particular Jammu Praja Parishad movement. And the worst has happened when S.P. Mukherjee, he passed away in custody of police. So, even today, Jan Sangh leader says that it is the Nehru government which killed him. So finally, Nehru has to make a statement which has raised the stature of the right wing in India. So, in this way, one good opportunity has been lost. Even today, in the real politic, the divide exists between Jammu and Kashmir. A dilemma exists for the politics. So BJP and PDP, if you see, PDP was strong in Kashmir region, BJP was strong in Jammu region. BJP wants to play for the politics or play for the Jammu region, and PDP wants to talk about soft separatist policy, and that's where the meeting of grounds is not happening. And in this case, after BJP's withdrawal of support to PDP, the government fell, and governor's rule. Normally, everywhere we use the word president's rule, but in Kashmir we use the word governor's rule because it is Jammu and Kashmir constitution which comes into operation there, and Jammu and Kashmir constitution talks only about governor's rule, not the president's rule. And after that, the separatists they called for a protest. It is called Joint Resistance Leadership, and Mr. Bukhari, a journalist, was also killed. This all shows that the situation is getting worse in Kashmir now. Dangerous spiral. Now, why the world has become prosperous after 1990s? More wealth is created, business got expanded, consumption has increased. So, the free trade is responsible for this. Now, once we raise the barriers for the free trade, what will happen to the global wealth? Obviously, it will come down. And global consumption comes down. So, it also makes the global growth to fall. And how the stock exchanges will respond to it? They will also fall to it. So, it means, is it doing any good to anyone? Because ultimately, when global growth falls, it is going to worst affect the poverty and unemployment. Developing countries are those which gets worst affected. And Mr. Trump has started this game by imposing tariffs on steel and aluminium. And then China reciprocated. European Union reciprocated now. India is also reciprocating. So obviously, any protectionism is not good for anyone. And it is going to lead to a lose-lose situation as Raghuram Rajan has stated. That's what this article talks about. Should Delhi be given statehood? Now, this is seen from two different lenses. One is from the lens of the union and the other is from the lens of the state. So when you see from the AAP or state government lens, their demand is, why can't it be like any other state? When we see it from the union lens, it is aptly to be a union territory unnecessarily it was given a status of a state. That's how both of them pursue this as. So in this case, what is the middle ground is the major question. So let us see the existing situation. So 69th Amendment Act, it has created National Capital Territory for Delhi. And this Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act, it has provided for the necessary administrative and political mechanisms. And in this scenario, two things we need to understand. Regulatory, developmental functions. These two cannot be diverse from each other in the normal circumstances. But in Delhi, law and order, security, land, these are in the hands of the union. And in the case of developmental functions like health, water, education, sanitation, these are in the hands of the state government. And we have a third tier of the government, that is local governments. So, if you see the international model, Washington DC, District of Columbia, it is under the union government. But more powers are being given to the local governments, especially for the developmental concerns. As the government totally belongs to the union, and local government has to function under the union, there was greater coordination. When two governments exist in a smaller space, in a national capital territory, city-state like Delhi, obviously there will be conflict between union and the states. And when their functions are not clearly delineated, overlapping of functions leads to confusion. This is what is exactly happening in Delhi now. And second, the most contentious issue is this, from democratic accountability perspective. Remember, an executive leadership shall ensure the accountability of the appointed leadership. It means an IAS officer shall be accountable to the minister. But these IAS officers, these are appointed by the lieutenant governor who is monitored by the central government. Obviously, the accountability chain is getting weakened. And the elected leadership is unable to get the work done by these appointed authorities. So that is the reason why it is demanded that there has to be a separate statehood for Delhi. But on the other side of the argument, Delhi is not just a state. It also has central government establishments, a place for visiting dignitaries, And above all, it consists of the embassies of different countries. In this context, if land, law and order, security are being transferred to the state governments, probably the central government will not have sufficient leverage to ensure the safety of the foreign dignitaries. So these are the arguments that are being put forward. World's hungry population on the rise again, says UN report. This is UN Sustainable Development Goals report. What it says is hunger is rising across the world. The major reason is conflict. Either it is Syria or it is in Palestine, the hunger is rising. So conflict, and the other is followed by drought and disasters. And then India US 2+2 dialogue on July 6th. What is this 2+2 dialogue? It is the dialogue between the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State from the United States and Defense Minister and External Affairs Minister, their counterparts in India. So this is what is called 2+2 dialogue. So this year the 2+2 dialogue is important because there are three foundational agreements India and USA are seeing to sign. The foundational agreements makes defense imports easy for India. So you know already, logistics exchange memorandum of agreement LIMOVA was signed between India and United States of America. And then we have COMCASA, that is Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement, that is yet to be signed. Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, this also need to be signed. These two are expected to be signed in the 2+2 dialogue this year. That's why it becomes important. Finally, the notes is available to you at laix.in/civilsprep. Thank you very much and all the best.